to be here. It's been so long. It feels like since I've been here. So I'm really so glad to see you all. I'm always happy to come to Unity of Merritt Island. And it's so beautiful out, isn't it? We're really easing into the best part of the year. The reason why we're happy to be Floridians. It only lasts that long, but we can enjoy it. So I want to tell you that I recently returned from a 3-week long road trip. And I drove to PA to see my brother and spend a few days with him. And then I went to Omega Institute. Is anybody here familiar with Omega Institute? Yay, a couple of you. Omega Institute was begun by a woman and her then husband. Her name is Elizabeth Lesser. She wrote the book Broken Open, if you want to read a good book. Anyway, back in the 70s, she wrote that. She and her then husband opened up Omega Institute, and it's way up in upstate New York, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And so what it is it's like camp for grown-ups. So you go there, and they've had people like Michael Beckwith and Pema Chodron and Thich Nhat Hanh and all the big names in spirituality, whether they be Buddhist or whether they be Christian-based. It doesn't matter. But they bring in all these big names and lesser names. But it was on my bucket list, and I'm really glad I went. So I was there for a poetry workshop for 5 days, and I'm going to take up a little bit of time to tell you about my accommodations. You get what you pay for. So I was in this little room, and it was called a cabin tent, and it was interesting. The accommodations itself were fine because I'm kind of a rough it anyway kind of girl. You know, there was no heat, no AC, and that was fine because the weather was perfect. The screen door is all I had, so you latched your screen door and then that was it. You were locked in like that. There was these 2 beds, like army cots, and since I was in the military, I was familiar with that. I had brought my own bedding because otherwise they charge you for your bedding. And all that was great, except where it was located was at the top of this giant hill. In Florida, we would call it a mountain. But I'm sure it's just an incline, but it was covered with rocks and roots, and there was no way to get up there easily. So they take your belongings, your 8 suitcases, which is what I had. Because don't shake your head. I had a bag for bedding. I had all my books. I had all my writing material. And then I had to have clothes because who knows what kind of weather you're going to have, right? So anyway, I had to drag this stuff up this mountain. You know, luggage has wheels on it. I didn't have many in the line of wheels when I left. So anyway, it was amazing. And I got stronger because some of you know I've had one knee replaced and I'm waiting to have the other knee replaced. And yeah, I was able to climb like this. Anyway, it was great. And so I was there for a poetry workshop. And I didn't plan on going into all that, but I feel like you guys want to know. So when the workshop was over, I drove to my friend's house who lived about an hour away from Ryebeck. And they treated me like royalty. So we got the train and we took the hour-and-a-half long train into New York City. I've not been to New York City since I was like that big, so of course I remembered nothing. And we got out of the train at Grand Central Station. Are you guys like, have you ever been there? Am I like the only one in the room that's never been to It's amazing, like what you see in the movies, except, of course, it's amazing. Then we went to St. Patrick's Cathedral, also amazing. It was a Sunday, and my friends are Catholic, so we stayed for the Mass. And I grew up Episcopal, so I was not unfamiliar with the rituals, but boy, am I glad that Charles and Myrtle came up with just pray. Just pray. All that up and down in the incense and all that stuff, as lovely as it was, I had a headache by the time we were done. It was a really nice experience. So look, I read all the whole first page and I didn't even get very far. Okay, but what I did notice at oh wait, and then we went we went to the Empire State Building. Yay! So that was cool too. And then they showed me where the towers fell, and I immediately bust out in weeping. Like it wasn't a pretty cry at all. It was weeping because that was that just took my breath away. So, I wondered if we as Unity people could bring some reverence, the same reverence, and not the same, but a kind of equal reverence that I experienced at St. Patrick's Cathedral, if we could bring that into our lives. I was very gladdened and inspired to read what Charles Fillmore wrote and said in the Revealing Word. He said, "The attitude of reverence is an important feature in developing the Christ consciousness. Without it, the mind loses a certain necessary connection with spirit." So we hear the word reverence and sometimes we back off because we're Unity people. We don't even use the word worship. I'm not real sure why. But in any event, I just really was touched by the reverence that these people showed. And we know where reverence gets shown inside because we are divinely made and we have the Spirit of God lives right here within us. We are divine, true creators. We are little pieces of God inside of us. So I was thinking about how to do this in my own life. So personally, for me, when I wake up in the morning and I take care of my bodily requirements, I offer and frequently write out my gratitudes. So I have a gratitude buddy. So 2 or 3 times a week, I text her all the gratitudes that I can come up with, and she does the same. And it kind of keeps me accountable. I would suggest you guys find a gratitude buddy. It's like doesn't hurt. You just on your phone, you just text out if that's how you want to do it. I frequently write them out and then take a picture of my gratitudes and send them to my gratitude buddy. So how's that idea sound? Good. I got a little response. Woohoo. So and then if I have a question, I engage in two-way prayer when I need clarity. And when do we not need clarity, right? Clarity. So two-way prayer is a writing practice. Are you all familiar with two-way prayer? Thank you. You have a question?
I do.
Okay.
What does the word reverence mean?
It means to respect and to feel and show awe. A-W-E, awe.
Like an example?
Like an example, okay, I'll give you an example. On my way over here, because I live in Winter Garden, Central Florida, I had my own debacle with the hurricane. I didn't think, I told Chris this already, I didn't even think about how things were over here. So every time I come to Merritt Island, I stop at the Intercoastal Causeway and I do a video on Facebook. And I tell people, I'm going to be at Unity of Merritt Island. This is what I'm talking about. But as I drove up, all these huge sailboats were thrown up against the rocks. I'm getting goosebumps. Now, that kind of awe for Mother Nature is similar to the kind of awe that I feel for God, because that's beyond my power. I can't do that. When we see, not this picture, although it's okay picture, the previous picture with the mountains in the lake, don't you feel something move within you when you see that? Thank you. That is awe. That is reverence for the creator of the universe. How'd I do? Good?
Yeah.
Thumbs up?
I just didn't know. So.
No, that's fine.
Ever gone to Redwood Forest
Right,
or the Grand Canyon?
right.
Are you not in awe?
So is it like beauty too?
Giddy. Yeah. It's like you're blown away. Your heart stops. But not for very long. so two-way prayer, which I just mentioned a moment ago, is a way of communicating with God where you can expect to get an answer back. So you write out a question. assuming that you're already in stillness and in meditation, you write out a question like, what should I bring to meditation this morning for Unity of Merritt Island? Within seconds, usually, I'll get an answer. And the answer was light. And it was confirmed with Jay's song. He sang about light, right? So I'm like, okay, we're on the same page here, right? So anyway, I'll engage in two-way prayer, and I may read something inspirational, and I might pray and meditate. Well, I always pray and meditate. And then I go outside, where for me, God is everywhere. God shows up in every bug, in every plant, in every cloud. God is outside for me. So it's outside where I personally, not for you, but for me, feel most connected. And that's where I feel the dazzle of restoration. And what do I mean by restoration, or to be restored? And how does it apply to reverence, you might be asking yourself. So we might use the word restored to mean an experience of healing, like Myrtle was restored to perfect health. She was restored after she prayed for 2 solid years. We might refer to a relationship, maybe a shaky relationship, and maybe you do the work that you need to do to bring the relationship back together so the relationship is restored. And that might not even mean a intimate relationship. It could be a relationship with a friend or a parent, a restored relationship. But what do we mean by restored to a closer relationship with God? Aren't we ever in a close relationship with God? Aren't we always in a close relationship with God? But does that necessarily mean that we, meaning our awareness, is close to God just automatically? Here's where you go like this. No, we are not always. We are the ones that step away from God. God doesn't step away from us. Understanding again that God lives within us, but we can go through days, weeks, years of not being connected to the God that is within us. So our conscious connection with God, our awareness of the presence, takes effort on our part, and that's what I mean by being restored to our connection. So I don't know about you guys, but I drift away pretty frequently from my awareness of the presence of God. Not on purpose, not intentionally, but it still happens because life happens and stuff gets in the way. So I cannot allow my morning rituals that I have to become rote. If I find that they've become automatic and meaningless, I switch things up and create new practices. But when the morning has passed into the afternoon, I better have some fresh ideas. Because I'm a morning girl, so by the afternoon, I'm like, dozing off practically. I deeply desire to be connected to God all the time. So in the afternoon, however, I sometimes fade away. How about you guys? Yep, it happens. So if I don't have some fresh rituals that I can do, I'll find myself lost in my head again. And that's not a happy place for me to go. So this is where restoration comes into play. Inner spirit, right? Inner spirit is the restorer, the grand restorer. I've found spirit to be a romantic, wooing me back to it again and again. Perhaps you're more pragmatic than I am because I am a mystic, and so I frequently live in a place of altered consciousness. But God speaks to me perhaps differently, pulls me back to it in a different way than God pulls you back to it. And I'm saying it because God is not a gender, right? So I've come to understand that my relationship with God is to be maintained like any other relationship, by talking to God and by being attentive to God, just like my other human relationships. So if I were to call my best friend who lives in Tennessee only when I want her to do something for me, or if I were to reach out to my adult children only when I wanted them to do something for me, that would not be a very good relationship, would it? Yet, that's frequently what we do with God. There may be a kind of help me deal with this, help me figure this out, give this to me kind of deal, right? That's not much of a two-way relationship. So what are we giving back? Where is the love that we show God? The adoration, the awe, and the reverence for the creator of the universe. The creator of, I can do that. Can you guys do that? Can you make that? A lot of help. So communication is a lot more than words. And if prayer is communication with God, then it must be more than the act of speaking or thinking. So I personally have a deep desire to express genuine attentiveness to God. We usually call this meditation, but let's reach in a little deeper. Let's go in a little further than just sitting in meditation. We all have different levels of the way we meditate, right? I think washing dishes by hand is meditative. I think watering my plants is meditative. I think cooking and preparing my food is meditative. And sometimes I'll sit still and meditate and just kind of stare at something. But usually my meditative day is wrapped up in talking to God, communicating with God, having a conversation with God while I do stuff. So in this sense, my life, my relationship to God is my prayer. That's how I pray. It's my intention, though I do not always succeed. The level of communication reveals a degree of intimacy that rises way, way above what I have previously experienced. So I suggest it may be time to reimagine our relationship with God. So just for a brief minute, please go with me here. Let's look at our relationship with God as a love relationship, just like a blossoming romance. Just for a minute. I know it sounds weird, but just stick with me here. Remember what it was like when you first met your current love relationship, your current most intimate partner? You wanted to talk to that person all the time, right? Thank you. You wanted to spend every minute available with that person, right? Yes. You shared every thought with that person, right? You wanted to be near them. You might have written love letters to them. And just as it happens with a human relationship, this relationship with God requires time set apart, time dedicated solely to God. It is more, so much more than our time in church, our minutes in prayer and meditation. This relationship has the potential to turn our entire life into a living prayer. And that will cause us to gently or maybe rapidly level up and expand. I'm in a place of huge expansion right now. And we can talk about that another time. So the Daily Word says, not the one that we read today, but it says, just a few days ago, it wrote this, under the word sacred. I think it was November 1st. When I realize the holy nature of life, the entire world becomes sacred to me. When life feels dull and colorless, which actually means we've lost connection with spirit, I can turn within to rediscover awe and reverence anew. Isn't that cool? They put that in the Daily Word just for me to put here. It is my belief that the last time many of us experienced awe was on the day of our birth, when we were totally tuned in, turned on, and completely connected to Source. So I want to get back to my 3-week trip for just a minute. I made it a pilgrimage. The way I travel is I don't use the interstates, not because I'm afraid of them, but because I can't really experience the country from the interstate. So I use a big atlas, spiral atlas, and my GPS on my phone. So I pick a town or 2 or 3 or 5 that I want to go to, and then I put it in the GPS. So I was on a beautiful stretch in the Appalachian Highway in North Carolina. I think that's where I was. And I lost my internet. And I was like, okay, God, well, you know where I am. And it was pouring down rain. And, the roads do like this, and up and down and all around, and I had no GPS. But I saw a babbling brook. I love babbling brooks. I don't know why. So there was a pullout, which I was grateful for. And so I pulled out. I think I may have done a video there. And it was raining, and I was so enjoying the rain and the babbling brook, and I was in the forest and the woods, and I just thought it was great. And so I got back in the car and continued going because the road only went one way, and I ended up at this post office, a tiny little post office that wasn't even as big as this little square here, and this teenage girl came out with fear all over her face, like maybe I had an Uzi. And I took my atlas in and I said, "Can you tell me how to get out of this area? I didn't even know where I was." And she goes, "No, I'm new here. I don't know anything. Go next door." So there was like a little camp store. There was people camping, and there was a little camp store. And I go in and there's nobody there. I'm like, "Hello." And this lady comes out, "Just a minute, I'm doing the laundry." Really? And so she came out and she said, "Well, you have to go back the way you came." And I'm like, "There's not a chance I'm going back the way I came." And so she said, "Okay, then go this way, and when you run into this particular road," which I wrote down on my hand, "then you'll turn right." And because we couldn't find it on the atlas, it was so tiny. So, and I said, "How come I have no internet?" She goes, "Their internet doesn't come out here." And I'm like, "Great." So anyway, I found my way to the exact same spot I started. That, like, 4 hours previous. So I was on a 4-hour tour. But I was so in awe. I was so full of reverence for the creator of the universe that A, took care of me. I didn't slide off the mountain. Right? I made it because I'm protected and I'm guided and I'm guarded just like you guys are. So there's a Franciscan theologian. His name is Ilia Delia. And he helps us understand the intimacy of this relationship. He uses the Hebrew understanding of God's spirit as breath. Many of us have heard that. Spirit as breath. The same breath that the book of Genesis tells us God breathed into the first human beings, the nostrils. So Delia says this: "Prayer is God's desire to breathe in me, to be the spirit of my life and draw me into the fullness of life. When I pray, when I breathe with God, I become part of the intimacy in God's life." So it's like this. I'll do it in our language. The intimacy of sharing breath, of breathing together, reminds us of doing CPR on another person. There is nothing more intimate than we put our mouth on another person who is apparently not doing real well, and we breathe into him or her until they come back, hopefully till they come back. There's nothing more evocative about life than us breathing into another person, our breath into another person. So when we become aware that life itself is breathing us in every moment, then we become more aware of the presence of God. And with that awareness comes reverence. Can you see that? Can you feel that? So I want us to breathe together for a few minutes. This is called a breath prayer. So let's just close our eyes. It's just for a quick moment. And when you breathe in these words. First off, I want you to visualize your third eye and bring a word to your third eye that for you means God. It could be the word God. It could be El Shaddai. It could be my precious creator. It could be anything, but hold that word right at your third eye and then close your eyes and breathe in the word, I rest. And then when you breathe out, say the words quietly to yourself, in the arms of God. So breathe in, I rest. And breathe out, in the arms of God. Again, breathe in, I rest. And breathe out, in the arms of God. Okay, you can come back to me now. Open your eyes. So we call unity practical Christianity. So I have some steps to help us realize and practice a more reverent life. but I don't know if I have time, Chris and Nancy. Well, probably another 10 minutes. Then people can leave. You have permission to leave. Nancy endows you with permission to leave. Do you want me to finish, guys? Go for it. So, unity is called practical Christianity, like I said. So, here's some practical steps to realize and practice a more reverent life. So, how do we revere these things that I'm about to talk about? We might call it respect for these things, or to be deeply heartfelt grateful for, like, our body. Number one is our body. And the scripture I found is 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. So what I read here is we honor, respect, and are grateful for our breath, our heartbeat, and everything else held within these earth suits. So we're taking the very best care of our body. We're responsible for these vessels. They were gifted to us for a time. Are they vessels that we love and adore? Or do we find them unattractive? Or do we find them physically detestable? So I am wearing a heart monitor right now because I'm getting ready for a heart procedure. And the doctor decided that this was a perfect, even though he's had 7 months, he's decided that now is the time for me to wear a heart monitor. And I stomped my feet and threw a little hissy fit, because that's me. I wasn't connected to God in that moment. But I'm wearing it, and I get to take it off on Tuesday. It'll be 14 days. Then I send it somewhere, and then they send the results to my doctor, and then they send me out. It doesn't matter. It's a big, long process because I'm a veteran, and so I go through the hoops. It's hurry up and wait with them. So I'm telling you about this because this heart monitor reveals what's going on in my heart so I can have it fixed, so I can have other stuff fixed. So I have to appreciate and be grateful and respectful of this piece of equipment right here. So I just want you to know that it comes up all the time, stuff about our bodies, right? So we accept it and we love it. So I'm loving my heart and I'm loving this heart monitor. Because what's the opposite of love? Fear. Being fearful of it, having other emotions about it, that's not going to help me. That's not going to help me at all. So what might this mean for you and your bodies? How might you show God gratitude and respect for your body that's been gifted to you? And let's not focus on what's wrong with our bodies, because as many of us know, what we focus on, we'll get more of. So don't focus on how this hurts, how that's failing, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't do any good. We focus with joy on what is working. What is working is my heart is still doing fine. Right? Okay. So, second, part 2. How do we revere, how do we show reverence for our children, grandchildren, parents, siblings, friends, neighbors, church community? Colossians 3:12 says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people," and of course we're all chosen people, "holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another." So, let the peace of God rule in your heart. How do we show honor and reverence for the people God has placed in our lives? So I woke up during the night thinking about this, because that's how God gets my attention, is in the middle of the night. And I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to tell them about this? What am I going to tell them? How to revere the people God has put in my body. The people in our lives deserve exactly what we want, our attention. which is the very same thing creative energy desires from us, our attention. We don't give God the attention God would love to have. So if I feel completely shunned, if I'm talking to somebody and they're scrolling away on their phone, they're not giving me their attention. Vice versa, if I do the same thing. Have you ever been to a restaurant and watched a couple sitting there and they're both scrolling away on their phones? They have nothing to say to each other? That's not attention. Would you agree? So I'm pretty sure that compassion, kindness, and patience is not at the forefront of their minds, or mine if I'm the one doing it. They're not giving me their attention. So that's what came to me this morning at who knows what time. So I feel like it was, it was downloaded this morning just for you and for me. What do you think? Yeah, we don't love it though, do we? Okay, another thing is our possessions. This includes the church property, our personal homes, our yards, our cars, our pets, everything that we think is ours. We need to show reverence and respect for. Here's the verses. There's two of them from the Old Testament. Deuteronomy 10:14. Indeed, heaven and the highest heavens belong to the Lord your God, also the earth and everything that's in it. Okay, that's pretty clear. Leviticus 25:23. The land shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine. For you are strangers and sojourners with me. I love that part. I am a sojourner with God. I am journeying along this life path, and God is my companion. So we all know everything's temporary, right? We don't love it, do we? Because we want to think that we own that what we've gone to the store and purchased is ours. But it's not. So some of you may have seen my Facebook post where I have this big tree that came down and smashed my shed. Wah, wah, wah. And it's been kind of difficult to get it, quote unquote, taken care of. And so I was pretty frustrated. This was about on Monday. So I sat in the middle of my bed looking out at the tree, and I'm like, okay, God, that shed is yours. That tree is yours. This land is yours, this little lot. This house is yours. I am yours. What are you going to do about it? But sometimes you have to get real direct. And within hours, for a couple days, I had 6 estimates to take care of this tree. And my adult children stepped up to the plate to help share the cost. Is that prosperity? That's big prosperity. Because I feel like I surrendered my hold on something that never belonged to me in the first place. Do you guys get this? Yes. I know you do. Okay, so everything's on loan to us, even our children and our grandchildren. They're on loan to us. We don't own them. And I wish I'd kind of gotten that when I was raising children, because I thought they were mine. Mine. But they've all gone their own separate ways. So the fourth thing I want to talk about is nature and the earth. So Genesis 2:15 says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. This Bible verse doesn't get any clearer about God wanting us to take care of the earth. It says right here, took man, put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. Literally, from the first book in the Bible, we are told that man has a responsibility for caring for the earth. So there's so many ways and things that we can do to honor and respect the land we live on, as well as the earth as a whole. Whether you're a believer in global warming or not, we can still positively impact our little corner of the world and the world at large by recycling, by composting, by being hyper aware of our water usage, our electricity usage. The list is endless, but I have a time frame here. So our personal devotion And praise of God can be creating a practice of prayer and or meditation walks, taking ourselves outside and noticing, writing a letter of thanksgiving to God for the glory of nature we're enjoying. Are any of you in here writers, journalers that will be, thank you, they'll be happy to write letters to God? So I have a prayer here. I'm going to read it really fast, Nancy and Chris. I have prayers written to God, and I got this idea from Heidi and David. And so I started writing prayers to God. So this is my most recent one. As night fades and the brightening sky brings another new day, I rejoice that I am granted this blessed day. My holy and divine self steps into this dream, consciously aware that I am a holy vessel, and choose to be aware of the presence and to be used in whatever capacity my Creator directs me. Amen. So I think it is my belief that God honors the fact that I took the time to write that. All right, for those of us who like tangible to-do things, number one, when you wake up in the morning, put on worship music, whatever that means to you. Sometimes for me, that means the 70s and 80s pop stuff. Sometimes it means my God is an awesome God. It kind of depends on my mood, right? Music is a thing that gets us moving. Number two, reading sacred or spiritual texts like Butterworth. Who doesn't want to go read some Butterworth, right? Just a couple paragraphs of Butterworth. Or a daily reader. You guys might have a daily reader, or the Daily Word. Poetry. I'm a poet, so I like to read poetry. We can write out prayers to God, like I just told you. We can write love letters to God, which I do, but I don't share those. Love letters to God, just like you would write to a person that you're in love with. So the way we show respect and reverence to and for our Creator is our own individual way. And these are just a few ideas that I use and that have been channeled to me from higher self. So I urge you, I implore you really, to seek a higher relationship with your Creator. Like all relationships, it takes time and devotion. But I can say with 100% certainty that your life will become more meaningful, more colorful, and more fun. Who doesn't want more fun? We all want more fun. Amen.